let's go get the kicked out of us by love. So Merry Christmas to all who celebrate and those who don't. Hope you have a nice day regardless. I am going to take this opportunity to talk about my favorite Christmas movie. I watch it every single year. I still watch it with my daughter's mother, even though we are not together, because we get together on Christmas Eve to set up the Christmas for the following morning, and we watch Love Actually. Love Actually is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite Christmas movie. It's my favorite romantic comedy. I adore this movie. So, I would think people know what Love Actually is by now, but on the off chance you don't, it is a British romantic comedy with, I don't even know how many, a lot of overlapping, intersecting, parallel stories about various people, couples, relationships having problems, relationships beginning, relationships having problems beginning, relationships possibly ending, all during the lead up to Christmas. And it cuts between all of these. We get eventually connections between some of them, and that's just it. You've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. You have this newly married couple and the best man who, seems to just sort of not be on board with this entire pairing. You've got a woman who's got a crush on a guy at her work basically ever since she's been there. You have a married man who is being tempted by a new person in his office, being tempted to cheat. You have someone who just lost his wife. You have a young kid who has his first crush. You've got the Prime Minister of Britain who just got elected into office and is finding himself against his better judgment, romantically interested with someone on his staff. You have an aging rocker trying to have his new song be the new Christmas #1. And if that one sounds weird, like it's the odd one out because there's no relationship element, stick with it, it gets there. And like you've got a writer who goes off to, I think it's France, to write, as he always does. And there is a housekeeper that he has, and despite the fact that neither of them speak the other's language, they begin falling for each other. And I'm probably even there's a guy who makes the decision that he's got to go to America because the reason he can't get a girlfriend is because American girls are cooler and they would dig his accent, and he is convinced that once he gets there he will be swarmed with women. So he's off on his mission. I think I've covered everything. I might have missed one or two, but yeah, there's a lot going on, and for all of that, it really is phenomenally constructed. That is the ultimate key to this. It is really well constructed, and the point at which it transitions from story to story to story all feels thematic. Things build in sync with each other to a glorious climactic stretch of the film where multiple of these stories hit their climactic points all together, and it really is amazing. Now, unfortunately, we do have to kind of blame this movie for the rush of holiday-themed films in this structure, like Valentine's Day and New Year's Day and just all these just junk that thought, oh, we'll do that formula, not realizing it's not about a bunch of stories set at Christmas. It's about how these things are different elements of how relationships work and how they move forward and how love, keeps the world moving, basically. And it's just phenomenally constructed. And a big part of why I love this movie is, look, I need to be blunt about something. I do not like many romantic comedies. There's very, very, very few of them I can kind of even tolerate. And ultimately what kills a lot of romantic comedies for me is that I hate the kinds of stuff that genre tends to use as filler. Because a romantic comedy generally breaks down in a very simple structure. Here's the two people who are going to end up together by the end of the film, and then we're going to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours throwing obstacles in the way of that happening. And that tends to result in extended humiliation humor sequences a lot of the time. A lot of, lunches with catty friends. A lot of, women just don't understand how men think, or vice versa. All those sorts of scenes jammed in to fill the gaps in order to delay the couple that we know is going to get together, ultimately getting misunderstandings. That's a huge one. Somebody always misunderstands or mishears or misinterprets this, that, or the other. Some of those things I don't like inherently. Others I'm just friggin' sick of. But what's brilliant about this movie is because it's all these stories laying over each other, all the filler's gone. This is legitimately, there's probably about 6 complete romantic comedies in here that could be their own movie if you stuck all the filler back in. And I probably wouldn't like any of them. But what is removed in order to have all these stories in a single film is all the filler. The filler's gone. And all that is left are the scenes that actually move things forward, the scenes that actually connect you with these characters, the scenes that matter. That's what's left. The best parts, not the crap that you go and you get a snack during. That's all gone. And what's left is amazing. And this cast, holy crap, this cast. All right. I'm not even sure I can even remember everybody in this, but you've got people who were already big at the time and then people who have become big since then. So, you're running the gamut from Colin Firth, Hugh Grant, Bill Nighy, Liam Neeson, Emma Thompson, Keira Knightley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Laura Linney. I've lost his name. The guy who's the main guy on Walking Dead. Now, he's in this. It is a terrific cast, and everybody's great in it. All the people I mentioned, Alan Rickman. God, how could I forget to mention Alan Rickman? All these people are amazing, and even the people who if you don't watch a ton of British shows, you wouldn't know otherwise. They're all great. Everybody's great. Whether they're in one scene or 5, Rowan Atkinson has 2 appearances. He's great. Everyone is phenomenal in this. And I love the range and the scope of the stories. Ultimately, since this is a movie about the uplifting power of love, most of these end well, but there's a handful of them that end more melancholy, or it just doesn't work, or end in a way that is kind of bittersweet. And then there's the ones that end perfectly. And it's just a glorious balance of these things. And because you do have those more the sadder ones, the ones that end a little bit less fulfillingly, that are more bittersweet or more melancholy, that helps keep it from being the overly saccharine film that it easily could have been. And again, is another thing that I think works in his benefit, given a lot of the tropes of romantic comedies, because usually in romantic comedies, your second act, where everything goes to crap right before it comes together, ends up being really contrived. That's where a lot of the stuff I talked about miscommunications come in, and but because this has some stories that just flat out don't end in the way that would be ideal for these characters, you don't have to do this hard pull down on the ones that are on a nicer trajectory. They still have complications in those, but the counterbalance often exists in other stories entirely. And just the construction of this thing, the tightness of it, I love it. I love it to absolute death. I know there are some criticisms that I've seen of it. I know some people are, I'm not sure it's a criticism, but it's a little bit regretful that there isn't, that all of the couples in this are cis hetero couples. There was actually a lesbian couple in the film in an earlier cut that got trimmed, not because of anything wrong with it, but because basically the whole subplot that factored into wasn't great and was kind of bogging down the movie. So it got excised with this whole sort of subplot. And unfortunately, it was a relationship that didn't have a connection and stand on its own as something that fit without the context of that subplot that got cut. So that is kind of unfortunate. So maybe my ideal movie, one of these would be a queer couple, but the fact that they aren't doesn't make it a bad movie. And I appreciate the fact that it was the intention to have that, but ultimately when you're cutting and you're editing, especially something as potentially, labyrinthine and overcomplicated as this, you need to make the decision that's going to make for the best film, that's going to be the best story structure, that's going to have the smoothest execution of the idea. And sometimes you lose good stuff when you do that. But I personally have no complaints about this. I love every joke. I love it. Bill Nye cracks me up every single time. And there are other things. It's funny which of these stories I find myself relating to the most. It changes with time as I get older. I'm not going to say which ones I kind of relate more to now or which ones I used to relate to more before, because that's getting a little too much into my personal life. But it's an interesting thing to go back and revisit every year, which I do every single year. I get to revisit this and see what moves me this time. And so oftentimes it's something else will hit me a little bit harder than it did the last year. And maybe something that, was, right in the feels is a little bit softer this time. But the things that are funny are always funny. And this movie always ends and I just feel good. And that's me rambling about why Love Actually is my favorite Christmas film. It's my favorite romantic comedy. It's one of my favorite films, which is amazing considering romantic comedy is a genre I actively avoid. So those are my thoughts on Love Actually. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. A whole bunch of stuff you can do because there's buttons and there's links, including one to my Patreon if you feel like being generous. 'Tis the season, maybe? That's a bit exploitive. I should cut that. I won't because I'm lazy. And until next time, this council is adjourned.